What's up, guys? This is Coach Sampson with another edition of Inside Iron Hills. Today I have two workouts for you guys that I'm going to show you. Two of my other very successful athletes. The first athlete of the day is going to be Claudy Robinson. Claudy was a standout at Don Bosco Prep. He was also a team captain, and he is committed to play football for Fordham this fall. And let's take a look at some of the film here. Claudy was a defensive lineman. He played across the entire front for Don Bosco Prep. At Fordham, they want him to play defensive tackle, but he also lined up as a defensive end on several plays this year. I think he also led the team in sacks. I think he had 8 sacks this year. So after the results from the last offseason, Claudy decided that this is going to be the place for him, so he's coming back for another offseason. And one thing I really take pride in is my ability to really expose weaknesses with each of the athletes that comes in here. One thing that I saw that Claudy really struggled with was the front rack position, which is actually a key component for not only the front squat but for Olympic lifts. And I don't want Claudy to go to Fordham, enter their off-season program, and be one of those guys that kind of has to go through a remedial program so that he could learn how to be trainable. I want him to go in there, hit the ground running, and I want him to really get noticed. The simplest way for him to go in and get noticed is to be prepared. So we're preparing for everything and anything. So some of these other drills that you saw before, we saw some of those Peterson step-ups. We're seeing right now some tib raises. The reason why I incorporated these movements is because Claudy actually struggled in the beginning of the season. He had some shin issues, some shin splints, some ankle issues, so I really want to make sure that this offseason we address it early so he's not dealing with those shin issues going into camp. You can't make the team if you're on the sideline, and also it's tough to make a team when you're in pain. So in order to prevent all those issues, before we do our running warm-up, which we talked about in the previous episode, we will hit those mobility drills. I hate to call them drills because they're really more strengthening exercises. And those two particular exercises, I got to give credit to Knees Over Toes guy, Ben Patrick, for popularizing those recently. And now you're going to notice that Claudy's main movement is actually a Bulgarian split squat. And this goes back to the theme of the video, which is what you hate is what you need. For big guys, especially football, offensive and defensive linemen, anything unilateral, aka off of one leg, is going to be very, very tough because you got to balance out that 275 to 300 pounds that you're carrying around all day. Claudy is actually, I believe, 300 pounds even. So if I could have Claudy master the split squat, imagine how much more balance he's going to have when he sprints, when he's in his stance. Hell, maybe this even makes those shin issues and ankle issues disappear. Another thing to keep in mind is Claudy is only 2 weeks out from his last game of the season. Don Bosco Prep actually made it to the state finals this year. They unfortunately fell short, but Claudy was smashing into people at MetLife Stadium only 2 weeks prior to this. So what you see here is the very beginning of his off-season training. So you're not going to see crazy weights being thrown around. Not that he's not going to eventually. Claudy, I believe, when they tested him at Don Bosco, he tested out as a 475-pound squatter. So will he be a 500-pound squatter at the end of this offseason? Absolutely. But this is the very beginning of that process. And what you'll see now are some fat bar RDLs, and what I love about the fat bar, and this goes for any kind of a thick handle, is that I don't need to load up the weights on guys in order to challenge them. Holding a thick handle, especially with a double overhand grip like Claudy's using here, is going to really tax the grip. So we get a lot of bang for your buck with those fat bar RDLs because you're hitting the hamstrings with an RDL, but with that fat handle, we're getting the fingers involved, the hands, the forearms, and it also forces us to use a little bit less weight, which we don't need right now. Right now, we just got to get trainable. And on this day, we finished up with some simple planks for a couple sets for a minute. The next session you're going to see today is from John Alvarado. You saw his brother Nick on the last episode. John is a linebacker for University of Rhode Island, and Jonathan is another product of Don Bosco Prep. Here you'll see some highlights from his senior season at Don Bosco Prep, and he's just an absolute beast. I've worked with him and his brother for a long time, and they both just love to compete. John is just a powerful kid, and he's so strong that when URI was down a defensive tackle, they actually played him on the line at defensive tackle.
And as Tyler Wills in again with Jalen Jackson in the backfield.
First and goal from the 5. Justin Covington gets the ball.
They go with the heavy package with Will in at fullback now.
And Villanova with Daniel Smith. Rhode Island reads it, and it's incomplete. He was under duress. They have athletic linebackers, as we've said, out in space, and Johnny Alvarado, number 35, into the backfield.
So you'll see John getting some hip mobility to start the day. And just a little bit of a background, John is home on winter break from University of Rhode Island. He's going to be home for 3 weeks, and then he's going to go back to URI, and he'll go back into the strength and conditioning program over there. They have a fantastic program over there. Shout out to the strength and conditioning staff at University of Rhode Island. And to just get into a little more detail about John's current training, John unfortunately got injured early on in the season this year. It was kind of a freak incident. It was actually the first week of practice. The heat index was super high. John actually was trying to catch himself after getting stiff-armed from one of the running backs over there, and he just stepped too far out and he tore his hamstring. And it just goes to show, no matter how strong or resilient somebody is, the sport of football is just brutal, and injuries are just part of the game. But after some time away from football, John has been making a full recovery. He just got cleared a couple weeks before he came back home from his physical therapist back at school, and now he's slowly getting back into the groove of things. And not only has this been tough because John can't get on the field, but John loves to train, and he doesn't just love to train, he loves to train heavy. He loves heavy barbell work, he loves heavy squats, heavy bench presses, heavy cleans, deadlifts, you name it. John loves the weights. But like we talked about in the beginning of this episode, sometimes in life, whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, whether it's in school, you name it, what you hate is really what you need to do. And unfortunately right now, his session mimics a lot of what he was doing in physical therapy, because what he needs right now is to get his body ready again for those heavy weights. It's not the right time to jump back into it. He's going to get back into it, but we got to do the little detail work first. So today we really took our time with the warm-up for John's workout. He did a lot of those mobility drills. He did a lot of band work. Now you can see him doing the glute ham roller. That's by Titan Fitness, just to really get some blood in the hamstrings, really activate the hamstrings so he could get comfortable with using them again. And since John has just gotten back into the swing of training, and also the fact that I only have him for 3 weeks, I really wanted to get away from putting him underneath the barbell, and I wanted to use this opportunity to find new challenges for John to overcome with his training. Challenges that are going to be tough, but that are also going to be healthy on his body, especially when you first come back from an injury. So 2 styles of training that John normally does not train in are isometrics and eccentrics. So you can see right here, this is one of the first isometric drills of the day. This is just a simple balance exercise on an AirX pad. They use this a lot with ankle injuries and ankle injury prevention, but really why I like the AirX pad is because it's teaching the ankle to absorb force, which again, going back to how John got injured, John was catching himself from a fall, caught himself with his foot, and ended up tearing his hamstring. Maybe if we have a little more balance there, maybe that injury is prevented. Another great point that was actually made by one of his strength coaches at school was that John has so much horsepower behind him. I mean, you're talking about a kid that squats 500 pounds, benches 405. I mean, the list goes on with the amount of power that John possesses, but maybe what we need to work on are his brakes. Imagine you have a car with 600 horsepower and the brakes are shot. What's going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. It's going to be a pretty devastating crash when you hit that wall. So things like isometrics, which you'll see here in his kettlebell squats, I had him holding an 8-second isometric hold on the last rep. Those things are going to teach him to put on the brakes. They're going to teach his body to be able to absorb more force. So that's really why I wanted to focus on, especially with his lower body training, is the isometric and eccentric work, because I want to put better brake pads on John. His upper body training for this 3 weeks has actually been pretty traditional. A lot of power bodybuilding, so we'll hit some bench presses, do a lot of pull downs, a lot of one-arm rows, a lot of bodybuilding type back work. But his lower body, this was the main focus. So we did, I believe, 3 sets of 8 this week. The week prior, he did 3 sets of 10 with lighter kettlebells, and he was holding it for a little longer in the bottom. After this, I actually threw a vest on John, and we did some lunge holds. These are another excellent exercise for putting those brakes on athletes. And last week, he actually did it with no vest, and this week he did it with a vest. And I'm going to tell you something. Try these at home. Try holding a lunge for 30 seconds, just your body weight. I mean, John was telling me afterwards, he's like, dude, my friggin' quads are pumped right now. But it just goes to show the power of isometrics, and they're just very, very sneaky. And not only are they sneaky in a good way, they're also very healthy for you. If somebody has a knee injury, lunge holds are actually a common exercise chosen by a mentor of mine, Zach Evanesh. If he has athletes come in and they're squatting and they can't squat, he'll say do some lunge holds. And here you're going to see some back extension holds. Again, I progressed John with these over the course of 3 weeks. This is, I think, our second week of training that's on the footage here. His first week, he used a 35-pound plate. This week, he used a 45, and next week, he's going to use a 53-pound kettlebell. Anybody that knows me knows that this is my favorite piece of equipment. Really gives you a sick lower back pump, and also you are hitting the hamstrings here, which is where we want the blood to flow, because the blood's going to carry the nutrients, and that's going to keep that hamstring healing up and getting stronger. And also it's going to prep him for what we finished with on this day, which is Nordic hamstring eccentrics. This is another variation that was made popular recently by Ben Patrick, and all you do is have somebody hold your ankles and fight the lowering portion of the Nordic hamstring exercise as much as you can until you can't fight it anymore. And this doesn't look like a huge range of motion, and that's because by design it is not a big range of motion. John is just getting used to using his hamstring again, so we just want to kind of slowly go into it, but by no means is this an easy exercise, even with this range of motion. Every week that goes by, we might lower the box just a little bit at a time, just to get the hamstring used to lengthening just a little more and a little more at a time until he could go the full way down all the way to the floor. And you can see the subtitle there. John told me how tough this exercise was, but the way he described it was after the workout was over, his hamstrings actually felt very good. And we finished this workout with just a different plank variation, chest touch plank, and there you have it. So those were the 2 sessions for this week's episode of Inside Iron Hills. Anybody from the North Jersey area, just a reminder, we're doing 3 sessions on us this month. We are still rolling strong with this promotion. All you got to do is text or call me or email me to set up your first session with Iron Hills. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.